Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and today we're going to talk about a mouse eating a fox. So, this is going to be a different video. Given the recent news, I thought it might be worth talking about this, since you guys are no doubt going to be curious about our thoughts on the matter. And, well, if I didn't talk about it now, this was just going to drag on forever. So, rather than make this into a whole thing, I'm going for a different sort of video. An unscripted, largely easy on the edit kind of video where I don't put in my usual bells and whistles that I do in a modern video. Just a nice simple discussion about this, my thoughts on the matter, and some of the details. So yesterday, as of this recording, Disney announced after weeks of rumors that they are buying 21st Century Fox assets for a whopping $52.4 billion as part of this historic Hollywood merger. The whole thing and the details behind it I'm still trying to figure out. I've been reading up on this and looking into it, but there's a lot of specifics and these are two very big companies that we're trying to parse out here, so bear with me. Basically, the deal is not that Disney is buying Fox per se, although it very much is being viewed as a merger. In fact, the second biggest corporate media merger in history. That's kind of a big deal. Disney is getting a hold of a lot of assets, ranging from the Avatar franchise to The Simpsons and other television properties of Fox, to, and of course this is most relevant and important to us comic book fans, all of the characters surrounding the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. There's other good aspects of this deal that we can appreciate, where rumors were suggesting that Rupert Murdoch's son might be taking over the Disney enterprise. We are thankfully not going for that, and Bob Iger, who's been running the company for some time now, extended his contract for a few years until 2021 to oversee this merger. Fox is going to continue existing, but is spinning off into a few companies: Fox Broadcasting, Fox Sports, Fox News, and their television stations. A handful of assets will be inserted into a new company, and it's still a billion-dollar company, so Fox isn't exactly gone. They're also going to maintain their current purchases and assets, so don't expect Disney to be taking over Fox News. So what are we to make of all of this? I know for one thing a lot of people are excited about Disney finally having access to the X-Men, but I would argue that a lot of people who are worried about this are rightfully worried. The US already has a bit of a monopoly problem. While there are usually at least 2 or 3 companies in any given industry, as the number of companies decrease across the board, the companies are allowed to collude and work together a lot more than they're not. By reducing the amount of comic book movie filmmakers out there, Disney's essentially wiped out their competition, especially given the lackluster performance of DC's Justice League this year. To put it quite simply, the DCEU is currently not up to snuff to actively compete with the MCU. The only company who really could have still was Fox, who showed this year with Logan that they still very much were in the game. And not only that, but they could challenge how people typically viewed comic book movies. Without them, Marvel doesn't really have that same level of competition. Meanwhile, Disney was already the biggest film studio in the world before any of this started. Now they're bigger than ever, and that is concerning, especially in a year where we've learned about Disney potentially interfering with elections. When that news was reported on, they attempted to punish the LA Times over it, and they even have changed the way movies are presented in theaters, and they're so big that they are effectively able to bully a lot of movie theaters into accepting their new rules, which are disastrously in favor of Disney. Their new rules in particular are especially punishing to small-time theater chains outside of the big companies, and that is worrying, as it should be. It's easy to look at this all as good right now while Kevin Feige and Bob Iger are in charge of the whole MCU brand. But that's not going to last forever. In fact, this deal has made it pretty obvious Bob Iger isn't going to be in charge of Disney for very long at all. Like, a few years is going to go by pretty quick, and then who's going to be in charge of the company? What happens when someone new is now in charge of all of these things? It could very well lead to a situation where we don't get a good comic book movie for a full decade. It's happened before in the past, and not that long ago either. Like, the 90s aren't some fictional era of history. That was only 30 years ago. Of course, I am mindful that Fox's banner of Marvel-related films haven't exactly had a great track record. And looking over the fact that they've relied heavily on noted abusers and other crummy people in Hollywood, it's actually not the worst thing in the world that Disney's getting a hold of the X-Men. It might be a banner and a mark of quality that these movies sorely need. This is especially true of the Fantastic Four, who have never really had a good movie distributed by Fox. It was initially reported that the Fantastic Four weren't part of this deal since they are technically owned by a company called Constantine Films. But it's not like Disney has overlooked that in a $52 billion deal, and their press team has assured the public that this is well under control and the Fantastic Four are also joining the Marvel line. Given the tone and style of the MCU films, they actually seem perfectly apt for the Fantastic Four. And better yet, it provides them the perfect groundwork for bringing these characters into the MCU. I have a strong feeling the next phase of the MCU post-Thanos is to head in the direction of Secret Wars. It not only brings in the awesomeness of Doctor Doom, but it also allows for them to tightly explain where the mutants were all along in this story. We can bring them in naturally without having to worry about this sort of stuff. That's kind of amazing and really promises some very cool content ahead of us. Like, you just know now Marvel's going to take advantage of the fact that they can suddenly rely on Kang the Conqueror, Galactus, Doctor Doom, all these characters in a really fun way. And it is worth getting excited about that. Meanwhile, it is worth noting that in the television world of things, Fox has always been a company that really takes chances. I am of the mindset to point out that Fox is the one responsible for creating stuff like Legion and other pretty interesting and daring shows, including a lot of comedies that I still watch, like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Last Man on Earth. Non-traditional comedies that a lot of people were nervous about before they came out, but have been really fun to follow. And yes, while Marvel has been pretty daring in the world of Netflix and television, I give a lot of that credit to Netflix over Disney. If you look at their track record outside of Netflix, it's not very good if you ask me. And Fox has done more interesting things through Legion and even Gifted, kind of. Although I'm not going to pretend I'm a big fan of Gifted. And yeah, there is certain merits and aspects of Marvel being under one banner that are really interesting. For one thing, it gives Marvel a solid direction to go to beyond the Thanos business, and we get a lot of really potentially cool crossovers and other interesting tidbits with each character. For the first time ever, it looks like in our lifetimes, we're actually going to get a crossover fight between the Hulk and Wolverine. And look, we could talk about monopolies and corporate control all we want and all day, but at the end of the day, it's really hard to look at this and not be excited about the fact that Wolverine gets to be in a movie with the Hulk. That's awesome and a core part of both characters, and there's nothing wrong with being excited about that. You can be worried about the potential corporate control of the company and still be really excited about this potential move. There's other little things I'm excited about too. The Avatar franchise is essentially dead because James Cameron has a very poor relationship with Disney historically, and Disney is probably not too likely to pursue the movies without him because honestly, no one cares about Avatar anymore. Meanwhile, it also means the end of so much nonsense on Marvel's part. We can finally expect X-Men characters to show up in video games again, and we can expect that they're going to have a much better treatment of the mutants in the comics. In fact, we haven't really seen Marvel comics in an era where the X-Men haven't been owned by another company in terms of film rights. And I suspect this is going to lead to a rather major change in how the X-Men are depicted. Keep in mind, this was the reason that up until now, no new mutant characters have been allowed to be created, essentially since the post-Avengers vs. X-Men era, and before that, not since Decimation. And that is exciting. That is worth getting interested in Marvel a little bit more again. So, if you can't tell, I have very mixed feelings about all of this. It's change, and change is going to come with both positive aspects to it and negative aspects to it. Marvel is going to have a very interesting time Marvel's going to have a really hard time fitting into their film schedule all these new characters and keeping a balance without flooding the market with superhero stories. And how they go about that is going to be very interesting. But the potential behind it is rather infinite, and there's nothing to stop Marvel from keeping all the great casting choices Fox has made over the years. Kevin Feige is actually a very noted fan of Deadpool, so without a doubt, he's definitely going to still make that a thing, and we can expect Deadpool to be doing all sorts of cool things. You want to see Deadpool as an Avenger? Because we're probably going to in our lifetimes, and that's amazing. There's something to be said about it also all being a lot less confusing. The average consumer shouldn't have to worry about complicated business decisions that span back a few decades to understand the continuity of various film, television, and comic book franchises depending on who owns what in what context. That's really weird, and it's very nice that, to a large extent, we don't really have to worry about that anymore. To finally have all of Marvel under one banner. There is going to be some very tangible benefits to it, and I don't want to underscore the fact that the people excited for this aren't just fans being happy about something like this. It is actually something kind of good for the comic book community, in spite of all of these business things. It's not like Disney owns the world. Let's not overplay the concerns people have either. There very much are tangible positives and negatives to this whole business deal. For now, it's hard to parse out what exactly is happening to television stations and all of that stuff, who is going to be running what and when, but it is exciting. These are exciting times we live in, and this was a big deal. That's why I went out of my way to make this video. It's big enough news that it's worth talking about right away. So I'm a little excited, but a little worried, and that pretty much summarizes my thoughts nicely. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below, and by all means, share your thoughts and feelings on all of this, because I'm very curious what everyone's got to say on the matter. In the meantime, if you like Comic Island, I encourage you to check out our Patreon page below, as well as visit our website, which is full of all kinds of great and interesting articles on comic books. You can find the link to both of those in the video description below. Finally, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.